Looking at the clock on the wall, the hour hand is at 11, the minute hand is at 59, and we are all watching the second hand because that is how short time is. The events unfolding around the world, especially those in the Middle East, have people wondering, are these the events or are they setting up the soon-coming events? At this point, I believe the events you are seeing right now are the events, not the setup for them. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so.
We're going back 2,500 years, 20 to 2,000 to 2,500 years ago, because Hamas did. Now, most people are thinking, wait, why is a reason for the war go back 2,000 to 2,500 years, and a spat that is actually showing up? And I'm going to play you the clip where the Hamas spokesperson in Gaza literally states the reason for the Al-Aqsa flood war, which we'll talk about that as well, literally goes back to the Jewish practice of the red heifers. And because Israel now has red heifers, that's actually a part of their reason for attacking. Now that is a little bit mind-blowing to a Western godless kind of world to realize the Hamas terror entity is very religious and is very worried about Israel coming back to their land as was promised by God. Now, since we're talking about this, and because Hamas is getting so religious, we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper to understand why they're being so religious about something the rest of the world has no clue about. Like, so what? Israel brought some cows over to Israel, and you're going to have a war with them because they brought a couple red little cows to Israel. Like, literally, that's what the Western world looks at this through the lens of, you can have cows, it's okay. Not Hamas. The Hamas entity literally is full-fledged into war, and the cows actually have a lot to do with it, which is insane. But let's look at this. There's some ancient Jewish writing, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute, but let's just look at it like that. There's this guy, Sam Ballot. Let's read it right out. He says, when Sanballat heard that they were building the wall and he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. This goes all the way back 2,500 years ago between the spat between Jews and Arabs back then. Okay. And he spoke before the brethren and the army of Samaria, where I'm actually sitting right now, and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Literally, that's what he says all the way back 2,500 years ago. And today, the Hamas spokesperson is literally saying exactly the same thing. Here we are. Same folks, same kind of situation, worried about Jews coming back and building in their ancient homeland, and specifically that they're going to sacrifice to God is their big, big worry. We're going to take a look at this clip real quick. Here we go. Let's take it.
عدوان بلغ أقصى مداه على مصرانا وأقصانا وبدأ تقسيمه الزماني والمكاني فعلا وأحضرت البقرات الحمر تطبيقا لخرافة دينية مقيتة مصممة للعدوان على مشاعر أمة كاملة في قلب عروبتها ومسرى نبيها ومعراجه إلى السماء.
All right, that was Abu Obaida, the Hamas spokesperson. Now, literally, this doesn't make any sense, but what he just said, you just saw it on the screen. The reason for this war was the bringing in of the red cows, as he said. Like, literally, guys, I'm telling you, this was his 100-day speech to the Arab world that is supporting him. He has to give the best rallying speech to his troops about why their war on Israel is significant and encourage them. And guys, this is mentioned within the first 2 minutes of his speech to the soldiers, being one of the number one reasons why the Hamas spokesperson believes that their war on Israel is legitimate and just and should happen.
I'm sure you've heard us and others talk about the red heifers. The prophetic implications of what is about to happen with them in Israel cannot be overstated. In my opinion, up until this point, what is about to happen is second only to the Reformation of Israel in its prophetic importance. The third temple in and of itself is not what is important. The third temple is not for Christians, and it's also not of God. However, its importance is prophetic. The Bible tells us there will be a temple in Jerusalem, a third temple. It's this temple that the Antichrist defiles, so there must be a third temple that is built. Building this temple cannot be done without the ashes of the red heifer, because they must be used to cleanse the temple, or it cannot be used. From the time of Moses until the destruction of the Second Temple, only 9 red heifers have been used to prepare the purifying waters. For more than 2,000 years, there has not been a single red heifer that meets the requirements. As of right now, there are 3. There were 4, but one has been disqualified because of a white hair. As much as everyone points to the Dome of the Rock as the obstacle to the Third Temple, the main obstacle has been the lack of a red heifer.
The conflict in Gaza now entering its 6th month. The Israeli operation to root out Hamas terrorists there has resulted in the deaths of 30,000 Palestinians and 242 Israeli soldiers. The war started after Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, killing almost 1,200 people and taking nearly 230 hostage, some still in captivity. Despite the deadly outcome across the region, one trigger for the Hamas rampage has been widely overlooked. Chris Livesay has the story from Jerusalem.
The infamous October 7 massacre that sparked a war. But one confounding yet eye-opening motive has escaped the headlines. In a recent speech, a Hamas spokesman blamed the Jews for bringing red cows to the Holy Land. The cows he's talking about at a secure, undisclosed location are these, red heifers, to be precise. Some Jews and Christians believe they're the key to rebuilding the historic Jewish temple in Jerusalem and to beckoning the Messiah. To understand, you have to go back nearly 2,000 years when the ancient Romans destroyed the last temple in the city. To rebuild it, these believers point to the Bible's book of Numbers. It commands the Israelites to sacrifice a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Only then can the temple rise again. Caring for them on an Israeli settlement in the West Bank is Yitzhak Mamo.
So we have here, after a long research, we find in Texas.
In Texas?
Texas, United States of America.
Texas Red Angus, flying them 7,000 miles to Israel.
This is not a publicity stunt.
What do you mean?
Meaning, this is something you take very seriously.
Harry Potter is a good story. The Bible is not story. The Bible is a way of God to lead us.
A massive altar already awaits, where the heifers are to be burned.
According to some believers, the ceremony needs to be performed right here on the Mount of Olives, looking directly into where the temple once stood. But something else now stands in its place.
The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, among the holiest sites in Islam. Today, only Muslims are allowed inside, but that's not stopping Jewish activists outside.
Once you got, we started here.
6 days a week, Melissa Jane Kronfeld leads groups from around the world who defiantly pray, as close as armed guards permit.
It's not about the destruction of Islamic holy sites. It's about preserving this place and being guardians over the house of God for all people.
So you're happy with it where it is?
No, it's going to go 100%, but I believe
it's going to go.
It's 100%, yeah. The whole thing is going to go. We have to build a temple.
When you say that Dome of the Rock has to go, MJ, it's hard for me to imagine something more incendiary.
Well, let me ask you something. The Middle East seems pretty destabilized right now, and the war, if I'm not mistaken, is already here.
To be clear, hers is a dream not shared by the Israeli government or by the vast majority of Israelis and Jews, but it's been enough to incite numerous Islamist groups. Hamas has dubbed its October 7 assault on Israel the Al-Aqsa Wave and has the Dome of the Rock on its emblem. But this is sacred ground to billions of Muslims globally, not just Hamas terrorists, stresses Imam Mustafa Abu Sway of Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Al-Aqsa Mosque belongs to all Muslims. So you'll find reaction from Indonesia to Toronto to New York. That's really given. Al-Aqsa Mosque belongs to all Muslims, and the Muslims today are 2 billion people. 2 billion people.
Simply by performing these acts, are these Jewish activists kicking a hornet's nest?
They are. They are.
A hornet's nest they're kicking all the way to Capitol Hill.
So good to see you here in the nation's capital.
Those sacred cows were showcased in Washington at a recent prayer gathering. Many evangelicals believe these red heifers will usher Christ's second coming.
And we need the Messiah to come, right? So for me, the red heifer, it's red for the blood of Jesus Christ.
Back in the West Bank, Mamo says the ceremony could take place any day.
But can you understand why Hamas could be outraged by something like this?
I cannot understand that even if they are right, why they have to slaughter and rape people to win their war.
Terrorists have been attacking us before we ever dreamed of these cows, he reflects. They don't need them as an excuse to kill. For CBS Saturday Morning, Chris Livesay, Jerusalem.
The Dome of the Rock does present an obstacle, but it's not as big as we tend to think. I believe the events we are seeing right now are going to lead directly to Isaiah 17 and then Ezekiel 38 and 39. Either during those events, or most likely after them, the third temple will be built. The reason I think it's most likely after is for a number of reasons, not least of which is that no one can stop them after Gog-Magog happens. The 7-year treaty will probably have provisions for this temple, but also, the Jews believe the Messiah himself will be the one that uses the ashes to perform the purification ceremony. This is from the Temple Institute.
The Mishnah teaches that up until the destruction of the Second Temple, ashes had been prepared from a total of only 9 red heifers. The very first red heifer was processed by Moses himself. As the verse states, "Have them bring you a red heifer." The second was done by the prophet Ezra in the days of the First Temple, and during the entire era of the Second Temple, only 7 more heifers were used for ashes. This was enough to provide for the nation's needs for purification throughout all those years. Thus, from the time that Moses received the commandment of the red heifer from the Holy One, blessed be he until the destruction of the Second Temple, purifying ashes had been produced by the hands of these great leaders from a total of 9 red heifers. In recounting this historical record in his commentary to the Mishnah, the great Maimonides ends with the enigmatic statement, "And the 10th red heifer will be accomplished by the King, the Messiah. May he be revealed speedily. Amen, may it be God's will." With this amazing statement, Maimonides recounts an ancient tradition that the 10th red heifer is associated with the Messianic era. Does this perhaps mean that the appearance of a red heifer in these waning end times is an indication of the appearance of the Messiah himself, who will officiate at its preparation?
Now we know from the Bible that the Messiah that the Jews are waiting on will turn out to be the Antichrist. The Jews believe and have a prophecy that it will be the Messiah who performs this ceremony. I believe it is the Antichrist who will perform this ceremony, which will take place after the rapture. This should bring into sharp focus where you are on the prophetic clock. The red heifers are scheduled to be sacrificed during Passover, which as of the release of this podcast is just over 3 weeks away. Now we don't know this for sure, because Israel is not giving out too many details due to the events of October 7th and the fact that was done to stop this very thing and what comes next. There is even rumors that there will be a live stream of the event. Not only that, but there is also a rumor that the 4th heifer that was disqualified was actually not disqualified, but already sacrificed as a fail-safe measure. This is reasonable, considering what all has happened, and the fact that these heifers had all reached the required age back in November of 2023. I also want to point out that as of recently I'm hearing reports that the Israeli government is against this happening on Passover, for obvious reasons. At this point we don't know for certain if it will happen on Passover or not. They may do it, but just do it in secret and then tell the world. We really don't know, but we do know that time is of the absolute essence. Every day they wait is another day for one of the 3 remaining heifers to grow a white hair and be disqualified. If that happens, it's not realistic that after waiting this long there be any others to take their place. They are under immense pressure to get this done as quickly as possible. Keep in mind, this is the sacrifice and burning of the heifers to create the ashes. But it is not the purification ceremony. That will come right after the temple is built, and, as I laid out, I believe it will be the Antichrist himself that will perform this ceremony. I will not be here to watch it. If you are, All I can say is, you better start repenting and asking Jesus to save you.
So, in order for there to be a third temple and these animal sacrifices commence, there are three things that Israel needs in order for the Jews to get their third temple. There's three things that they need in order to get their third temple. Number one, they need all the temple items and utensils and things like that and the construction material. Number two, they need the red heifers. And number three, they need the national will to build the temple and the geopolitical, landscape to be viable. Okay. So number one, like I said, is the temple items and components and construction material. They have it. They have it all. In fact, I heard Mondo Gonzalez on an interview say that there was a nation state, and he didn't name who it was, but there's a nation state who has already committed to Israel, to the Temple Institute, to provide all of the gold necessary for the temple. So they have that ready to go. The Temple Institute themselves already has all of the components for the temple. In fact, let me pull up their website. I want you to see this for yourself. Let me share it on my screen here, because this is wild, guys. You're looking at incredibly amazing prophetic things before your eyes. So look at this. This is the Temple Institute website. Okay, this is a Jewish Orthodox Temple Institute. They do not believe in Jesus. These are Jews. And let me read to you here. This is literally pictures. This is their gallery of the stuff they've already built, exactly to specification from Scripture, ready to go for the temple. And let's read this section right here. It says, "The Temple Institute has likewise called upon Israel's finest craftsmen and artisans and enlisted them in the historical task of recreating the sacred vessels and vestments. Every vessel produced by the Temple Institute is done in accordance with the precise instructions that were first handed down by God to Moses. The vessels you are about to view are all fit and ready for use in the holy third temple. May it be built speedily and in our days." Okay, this is straight from their website. I mean, look at this. These things, see if this stuff is ready to go. They have it. The wine libation cup. They have, the incense. They've got these cups. They've got all this stuff. The high priest's garments, the ephod. I mean, it's all there. They literally have this stuff ready to go. And you can go look at this yourself, templeinstitute.org. Okay. So not only that, I think the Temple Institute has said, if they get the go ahead, because they have things prefabbed for the temple and they have everything apparently lined up and just ready to go at a moment's notice once they get the green light. I think they said they could have the temple built in like 3 to 6 months. So apparently it wouldn't take them very long to get it up and built and just ready to go. So that's number one of 3 things that they need for the temple. Check. Number 2, red heifers. They now have the red heifers. So that box is checked. And either they've already sacrificed one in secret and have its blood and ashes and stuff, or they are about to sacrifice one according to their own words around Passover, which would be, the end of the month. And then they'll have one. Okay. So that's number 2. So that leaves only one thing left standing in the way from them having their third temple. And that would be the national will of Israel to do so, and geopolitics. That would be the third and only final thing standing in the way.
That was from The Red Heifer and Israel's Temple, produced by Generation 2434 on YouTube. I do recommend their video on this. It's very good. We are seeing so many events starting to converge. We've been wondering if what we are seeing is the setup for the events that bring a global government, a global currency, the control system the Antichrist will have, Isaiah 17, Gog Magog, and so on. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, at this point I don't think we are seeing the setup for these events. I think we are seeing the events themselves, and they are all starting. And as I said, we are now watching the second hand of the prophetic clock.
But take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch therefore, and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man.